And that kind of brings me back to one of my favorite quotes, man, by Ernest Hemingway. And he said back in the day, this is an old quote, but he said, true nobility does not come from being better than your fellow man. True nobility comes from being better than your former self.
Look, hell of an intro. I tell you what you info, but I never really been the type of dude to give no info. But if you see your ends low and you trying to get a benzo, I'll give your ass some game that'll change the way that you think, bro. Super skilled with the pencil, super ill in my mental. I reminisce on life, I'm nice, here's my memento. Get it through your tempo, I get on any tempo and give it all I got. I'm hot, I got like 10 flows, trying to live on the 10th floor, across from residentials that I own. My mind stayed grown, I used to think clothes, I really used to think hoes and what I do to get those. And then I switched it up, I'm only thinking potential. Yeah, like what you do, homie? What's your vision? How you thinking? How you move, homie? And is you cool, homie? You thinking building, then that's something we could do, homie.
This one has been a long waited. Actually, how we all began is actually interesting. So everybody's going to want to hear this one out. But welcome to the Walk and Grip podcast. It's Roney and Francis on the mic. Wow. This is the one place where you'll get to empower your mind and transform your reality. And the best part is you get to do it with us. Again, sometimes you'll hear us rant, or maybe you'll hear from a special guest like today, share their perspectives on their life and their insights of what they have to share. But we definitely want to hear from you guys as well. So don't forget to DM us and email us #GrowTogether so we can go ahead and hear from you. But like I said, I don't want to go straight into it and share with you guys the one individual that we have on today. If you guys do not know, go watch her. Go see our beautiful faces on YouTube. And we have today our special guest, Darrius. I'm not going to say his last name because I don't think you guys need to know that. But if you're watching, you could probably see it. But Darrius McMillian. I think I said that right. Did I?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, we have Darrius here today. He's actually an individual that we met, although we're all in North Carolina. We met outside of North Carolina, which is, you'll get to hear a little bit more about how we met. And that was when, Francis and I, we were living the Wild Wild West. I don't know, maybe Darrius was living in that Wild Wild West moment too, but it was a good moment. And it's funny to look back at and see where things are today and how actually everything transpired and how the world works in circles. So first and foremost, thank you, Darrius, for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely, y'all. Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate, the time and the opportunity to speak with you guys. So yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's an honor. It's been one of those things I think, I think everybody needs to hear somebody's story, better yet, yours, because I think yours is extremely unique given your upbringing and just how you kind of grew up in this world being a military child. All right. So I want to take a deep dive first into just kind of hearing a little bit about, your past and just kind of what led you to who you are today.
Yeah, for sure. I get asked sometimes, like, Darrius, where are you from? And that's a very challenging question for me to answer sometimes. So I just answer with everywhere. I grew up a military brat. My dad served 31 years in the United States Air Force. I like to say my mom also served too because she moved with them. I moved with them, so technically I served. But not really. I attended throughout that process while my dad was in the military. I attended 5 different elementary schools, 2 different middle schools, and 2 different high schools. So, that process growing up was always an adjustment. You're constantly in a new environment every 2 years, and it's almost like you have to reinvent yourself, and you have to be resilient also at the same time. So, at growing up, you don't understand that type of, you're not able to conceptualize that. But, now in hindsight, I'm able to see, okay, well, these are the skills that I was able to attain from, moving from different places, speaking with different people with different cultures and different backgrounds and, just a different family setting also. So yeah, it definitely made me the individual I am today, and I'm extremely grateful for it. After high school, I attended Virginia Commonwealth University. Um, Graduated in 2016, started grad school at UNC after working there for a few years. And now I'm currently working for the VA in Durham, North Carolina. And, I'm excited about the new opportunity. And yeah, here we are, man. Here we are.
That's awesome, man.
Go ahead.
You've had quite a journey there, and you mentioned that you've had to reinvent yourself along the process and make the adjustment. How does that impact your relationship with the people that you've met and just your growth overall? Like, have you been able to, maintain certain relationship along the way, or was it hard moving around so much?
So,
And we're talking meaningful
I think so.
relationship,
I think so. I think like us growing up, I like to call us, the late 1900s kids, the late 90s kids. But we grew up in a different society, in a different sort of generation. When I was doing all of this, moving around from state to state, sometimes it was even city to city. I remember when I lived in Colorado, we literally moved from one part of the city to the other side of the city. And I switched schools. One school was named Timberview, the other one's name was Eagleview. So, and the schools were designed the same. It was almost like a game. I felt like I was a player in a game. But in terms of those relationships, I felt like those relationships had to be more authentic than, many, I don't want to say all of them, but, some of our relationships today, just because we didn't have the technology. I didn't really grow up with a cell phone. I got a cell phone my junior year of high school. So all those times we were moving, we didn't have social media. We didn't have, cell phones and stuff. I grew up in the time where, if you wanted to see what somebody was doing, you rode your bike to their house, knocked on the door, and, asked their mom if they could come outside. But yeah, I think one thing, growing up and having that realization actually brought to me in terms of relationships is, and I tell people that I'm involved with, tell people that, I'm interacting with, one of my traits that might not be, highly favorable among society is I'm able to like switch from person to person. And that's not a good or bad thing. I just mean that in terms of like, if I know we aren't equally yoked, if we're not aligned in the way that I see my life going, I'm out. There's no game. I don't need closure. I'm out because, I don't know how much time I have here. So I think that's one aspect of the constant moving that I have carried into today. But then also, like, I do value like tangible relationships. Instagram friends, close friends, that stuff doesn't really matter to me. Some of my best friends I speak to once every 3 months or something like that, just because we're all in different parts of the United States, different parts of the world. And we all have, our own lives and our own things going on.
That's right.
But we don't lose that connection because, it's founded on something more than just whether it's aesthetics or whatever the case is, but it's founded in something that's deeply rooted in, our beliefs and our values.
Well said.
Yeah, go ahead, Francis.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna, say that that's actually true. The relationship, whether it's tangible or meaningful in any way, I've experienced it myself coming from Africa and being here. There's a lot of people that I've met across the country and through the years, and some of the closest friends that I have, I haven't physically talked to them in more than 4 or 5 years, right? So it's like, but you still know at the core that this is a relationship that I nurture no matter whether or not we talk, and it's reciprocal on both sides. They know it, I know it, and that's what keeps us going. Like you said, we all have our things going on here, and yeah, it's life.
Yeah,
it's life.
It's quite interesting.
And that's
to
important
hear.
what you said too,
Go ahead, Darrius.
I was just going to say that reciprocity that Francis brought up, that's extremely important because, you know, you don't want to be spending all your time on somebody who doesn't spend their time or equate that time, you know, towards you as well. So, and that's in any relationship. It doesn't even have to be an intimate relationship, just a casual relationship for sure.
That's true.
So very good point.
Yeah, I love how both of you guys, I wouldn't say come from a very similar background, but you guys can relate more than I can relate to you guys, because I was raised same city, same town from when I was a child. So really, the people that I speak to now that I'm really close with, I still speak to them to this day, and we've kept that relationship extremely strong. Just because again, we all stayed together, and we all pretty much stayed in the same town. So it was, of course, not at our choice. But even though that now we're all grown, we kind of all went our separate ways, we still found a way to keep that relationship and keep those things really tight. And so I don't really necessarily know of, you know, in terms of what you guys went through, is like, how were you able to even identify? I guess you guys have kind of already said it's the tangible, but Darrius, in your aspect, you were moving so quickly. What was it that really made you stand or at least keep that relationship close with one person over another?
I'm not actually sure. I just gravitated towards people that shared the same values that I did. And even if they didn't, we had some sort of commonality. And usually I would say it's pretty easy growing up in a military environment, because oftentimes we stayed on military establishments, so Air Force bases usually. And these other kids were moving every 2-3 years also. So we were able to connect on that level. Hey, like, where have you lived? Where have you been? I met kids from, you know, Italy, Anchorage, Alaska, California, like all over the world. Wow. So we were able to connect on that level. So being in an environment with people who understand not only what you're dealing with and what you're going through, but you can have conversations with them. Because I actually remember this when I was in elementary school. I think I was in the 5th or 6th grade, and I had a birthday party, and my parents had never really met my friends. So, you know, we brought them all over to the house, and once, you know, we had the party, and once everybody left, my dad sat me down, and he was like, Darrius, all your friends are nerds. And I'm like, yeah, like I didn't know how to take that, you know. But he wasn't being disrespectful. My dad's just, you know, very straightforward and blunt. And he's like, man, I'm proud of you. You know, you're not just hanging out with, you know, football players just because you play football, basketball players, you know, athletes. You're hanging out with everybody. And I said, man, look, everybody's got something to offer. I didn't know this at the time, but everybody, like, I'm learning a little something from everybody. So I think like that was really enlightening for me at that time. I didn't realize how enlightening it was, but you know, I truly do realize the special gift that moving around and being in different environments presented for me as a kid.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad as you mentioned that, because some people that may be experiencing that lifestyle that you previously lived may be listening to this right now. And so I kind of want to see if there's anything that you would say to that person right now that may be listening to this and going through those day-to-day emotions, the year-to-year, month-to-months that you went through. Like, what would you say to that person right now?
It's all preparation for something you can't even understand. I mean, honestly, that's truly what I believe it is. Because, you know, I was in environments most of the time, you know, especially in the Midwest, where, I mean, I went to a high school. I won't name the high school, but I went to a high school in the Midwest with 8 black kids in it. Had 8 black kids in the entire school, right? So in order for you to be or for me to be an individual who is confident in himself and willing to stand on what he believes, my dad used to give me these like little pep talks before I like the first day of school. And he would be like, you know, Darrius, you got to be strong. You got to be you're a black dude. You're a black dude. You can't do everything that other people do. And I didn't understand that at the time. But that resolve, man, being in a school where no one really looks like you, no one understands how you're feeling, no one understands what you're going through mentally, emotionally, even physically. You don't feel like you can talk to people about like how your body's changing. Hey, I don't have any friends that can really relate to me. But yeah, man, just that resolve. And I'm telling you, man, I'm able to maneuver and operate in rooms that I didn't think I would ever be in, just off of my I don't want to say military experience, but growing up a military brat. It's been great, man. I've been a lot of places, man. I've sat at the dinner tables of 4-star generals in their house. And then like the very next day I was sitting at the lunch table with the homies. So I think that's a good dynamic to have as an individual for sure.
As a military brat, what are some are like, you must have experienced some sort of, that discipline and mental toughness was kind of instilled in you pretty early on. How did you, manage that along with some of the things that you may have wanted to do for yourself but were unable to do? So I'm more talking about your emotional state compared to the mental toughness and the discipline that were being, enforced by your surrounding, because you were basically around that 24/7.
Yeah, man. Francis, every time you say discipline, man, I'm having flashbacks. Ooh, discipline. Yeah, man. My dad used to have this saying. He used to call it the 3 Ds: discipline, dedication, and determination. I would hear it every day, man. And I think one thing about me is my parents were very open to what I wanted to do, like, and what I wanted to experience. But there was always a factor of life isn't fair involved into whatever I wanted to do. So for instance, when I wanted to play football, when I started playing football for the first time in elementary school, I had to write a contract. Like I had to print out and type up a contract for my dad, and we both signed it. And the contract stated like I would maintain a certain GPA. I would, have my homework done by a certain time during the week. I would have my chores done by a certain time during the week. If I broke any of those contractual agreements,
that's it.
I was pulled off the team. And this, I actually have a real story about this. This was the most embarrassing moment of my, I want to say high school career, but it was very embarrassing. Playing football in high school, I'm doing really well this year. I mean, really, really well. And I end up getting a C on some algebra exam. And the contract that I signed with my dad that year said I will not receive a C on any assignment in any class. But, I thought he was bluffing. I thought he meant like, I interpreted that as a C in the class. Like, I wouldn't get a C in the class. I got a C on an assignment. And he looked at me. We were in a car. We were in this 91 Honda Accord. I'll never forget this. And he looks at me in my eyes and he says, go tell your coaches you're turning in your equipment. I'm like, dude, it's the middle of the season. We're like game 6 or 7. I'm the starting running back and everything.
Oh man.
And I had to go in to the coaches, and I actually spoke to the entire team crying. I was like, look, I signed a contract with my dad, broke the contract. This is time for me to man up. I'll no longer be playing football this year.
Wow.
And I did that. And it was tougher too, because like that was my last year in Colorado, and I knew it was my last year because my dad was about to get reassigned. Sorry, my mom's calling. I don't know why she's calling me. But my dad was getting reassigned. So, I mean, it was hard, man. It was hard. And I got back in the car. Me and my dad drove home. and I'm still crying, but I'm thinking like of all of the things I could have done differently. Like, oh man, I should have focused more on studying for this exam. Like I knew I knew what his expectations. I knew what he always expected because we actually had this conversation a couple months ago. And I was like, Dad, would you do that again? And he's like, absolutely. Look at how you turned out. And I'm not perfect, but he's like, you turned out pretty well. You know, I'm not saying I did everything perfect. I didn't raise you perfectly, but you know, he did his best for sure. And I'm grateful for the tough love now. Hated it then, man. Hated it. But that's what kids are supposed to hate some of your methods and methodologies of the parents for sure. Hopefully I answer your question.
Yeah, you did. And it's like, you actually talked about it at the end. When you're going through the motions, it's like, get me out of here. I don't want anything to do. But then at the end, you're like, down the line, a few years down the road, you become grateful for those experiences because it built you into the soldier that you are now and able to navigate what you're going through. So you actually talk about some of, what was going to be my next question is adversity. How does Darrius address adversity? How do you address challenges in your life? And if you come across, some sort of failure, how did you handle it, basically?
Yeah, back in the day, I did not handle failure very well. I was actually ranked in the state of O'Fallon for my age group. I was the 11th ranked Taekwondo martial artist like in the state at that time. But there was this kid, man. We used to have these biannual tournaments, and this kid would beat the hell out of me when we would spar. I mean, just obliterate me. And I just never handled that well. Like I would always I would always get second place, but I always felt like a loser. Because I have a highly competitive mentality, a highly competitive drive. But now honestly today, I embrace failure. I love failure. I think if you're not failing, you're not truly trying. Because I failed, honestly, I'll be honest with y'all, because, I like you guys. And you guys are cool people. You guys are transparent. I fail every week at something. Every single week. And it could be something that I haven't tried before, something that I have tried before. Whatever it is, I have to push my limits and push my boundaries. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, that comes with being a student of life. In life, you're going to fail. One day, if we eventually have kids, we're going to fail in some way with our kids. We're not going to be perfect. We're going to fail some way with our spouse. That's just a part of life. So we have to stop viewing failure in a lens in a negative lens. Failure is not a negative thing at all. Failure is what drives success, what drives progress. I think if anything, success is that's really the drug you want to kind of learn how to balance, because that's what builds complacency. I remember when people were telling me, oh, Darrius, oh, you're so good at this, especially in football, man. I was that guy. So I'm just there was a time in football where I was just not doing schoolwork. I was like, man, I don't need to do schoolwork. I'm about to get a D1 offer. I'm about to, go to college and play D1 and do all this stuff. No, that did not happen. So, I think failure is something that I embrace now. And yeah, I don't know where I would be without it, to be honest with you.
Gotcha. And it combined with the mental toughness and the discipline, I'm sure that you've done your thing with failure. And like you said, we all go through it. Every week there's something that you can do better, but you just fall short on it. But you rearm yourself and go at it again the next day you get up. It's like every time we wake up, we get a chance to go and try again harder. So embrace that failure, like
And
you
that's
said.
a blessing, man.
It is. It very, very much so is. And and you see it nowadays where, I like to say that the world somewhat look like my sweater right here. You got people all over the place doing their own thing, struggling with some sort of, mental health issues. It's like we all have our struggle in life. And if we can remove that connotation with failure as being something bad, and rather than, it's a process along the way towards success, it changed the narrative of how you approach life. It completely does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You have the good saying too. Is I forgot who says this, so I'm not gonna try to quote anybody on this one, but failing forward. That's ultimately what it is saying, and what you'll hear a lot. But you mentioned you embrace failure. You love it. It sounds like you love it because it enables you to grow, right? Which is great, which is phenomenal. But when you're faced with it, when you're looking at failure, what is it that you do at that moment?
When I'm looking at failure, honestly, sometimes when I'm in a moment where I don't even want to call it a moment of failure, but a moment of realization, and things are falling apart, I always think of like, it could be way worse than this. Like it could be way, way worse than this. Because I've honestly learned a lot about my parents. As we get older, or as I get older, my parents sort of become less of my parents and more so of my mentors, per se. But I'm learning a lot about, their upbringing and what they had to deal with, in college, with family, raising me, moving around constantly. Like, my mom had to find different jobs. Not only was I like going to different schools, my mom had to find different jobs. Like, that's challenging.
Yeah.
So just like learning what they had to deal with, I'm like, look, man, anything I'm going through, anything, I fail at, it's not that bad. Because at the end of the day, if I didn't die from it, I didn't fail. That's a lesson. And that kind of brings me back to one of my favorite quotes, man, by Ernest Hemingway. And he said back in the day, this is an old quote, but he said, true nobility does not come from being better than your fellow man. True nobility comes from being better than your former self. So when I look at my past and I'm like, look, Darrius, this is where you were. Like when we all first met, that was a different Darrius. Yeah. I'm sure, that was a different Francis. That was a different Ron. We were different. And I think like the noble thing about that is like, we're able to look back on like, what were we doing? Like we know what we were doing, but like, what were we doing? And what was the outcome of that? You know what I'm saying? So just having that perspective, I don't think I look at failures dead in its eye. Like, what's up? What's good with it? It ain't nothing, man.
Yeah. Everyone deals with it completely different. So it's always good to hear somebody else's perspective so that other individuals know outside of Francis and ourselves, because we spoke about failure plenty of times. So it's always good to hear from other individuals how they go about it, so that other people can see, like, everybody has their own way of dealing with it. Your way could be that way, that perfect way, or not. So there's things that everyone can take from anybody that's here on this podcast speaking about whatever it is, speaking about specifically here, it'll be failure. But I want to take a trip back down to memory lane because you said it, man. You said it. You said it, man. I don't know if you're really ready, but as I mentioned earlier, and he goes to hiding. As I mentioned a little earlier in the introduction, is just, we all met outside of North Carolina, and everybody listening is probably like, where in the hell did you guys meet? And we honestly met, I forgot which weekend it was. I want to say it's 4th of July. Correct me if I'm wrong.
4th of July, yeah. It was 4th of
July week, yeah. And we all met in Houston. Now, where we met, I think, is even more significant. Because the place that we met, it wasn't just, walking through I think it was the Galleria Mall. We weren't anywhere close to there. We were actually, I forgot where exactly we were. So Shout out to the place that was. Sorry, I can't promote you here because I don't remember what it was. But we were essentially at a party, and that's where I think Darrius is like, where we were back in our past is where we are today.
Yeah.
And I mean, a full blown out party. Like, I enjoyed every second of that day. I'll tell you that right now.
That's
So
right.
you can almost take how much of a great time that I had. I'll let these guys share whatever experience that they want. But that's essentially what we did. That's how we go out. We go network with people. We find out, hey, what you're all about. And at the same time, we found out, oh, shoot, you live in North Carolina? So do we. Oh, you over there? You 30 minutes from us? Okay, bet. We got to link up, and here we are. What is it? That was like 4 years ago, I think.
So this is a while ago, man. This is a while ago.
I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, maybe.
This is
I
2019.
say like 2019.
2019.
Yeah.
It was 2019. Yeah.
So about 4 years ago.
Yeah, and you talked about it like when we met that day, the personality that you brought, like we clutched, right. We were able to bond
Right off the rip.
right off the rip, and what's cool is we maintain that connection even afterwards, and that's something that I don't often see, especially in the type of environment where we met. So, just kind of to pivot when you were talking about your old self and looking back at that self, because you're really in this fight, we're fighting against ourselves, right? How do we improve our quality of life to be better? Now, when you're looking back at that old self and you're like, and Darrius now, what are some of the things, because we're all from the same generation, what helps you now that back then you had no clue will be important to your progress, to your path? Because when we were there, we were just like, I was there to have a
We
good
was
time.
lit.
I was just there to have fun.
Yeah.
No plans, no dreams, just like, we knew we kind of knew what we wanted to get done, but it wasn't as clear as it is now. So it's like the narrative has shifted now. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's... So, Ron, first off, bringing up the memories, man.
Okay.
Let me set the background real quick, at least from how I remember it.
Okay.
It was a Rick Ross pool party,
correct.
right, in downtown Houston. And I think like I was in the little bar area, just mingling, walking around. And I had saw you. I was with one of my homies. And I saw you. And I was like, look, I said, I gotta talk to this dude. Because we're around the same height. And you were bald at the time. And I was like, man, I'm bald now, but I was still like questioning. I was like, man, should I like cut all my hair off? So I need to pick this dude's brain, man. He's already done it. So
Yeah.
that's really how like I wanted to initiate the conversation, but like you said, it sprouted into something much greater and much deeper, much more substantial than that. And honestly, Francis, just to speak on, your question, I think it's experiences, man. Because not long after that trip, because like during that time in my life, I was drinking a lot. But not long after that trip, I actually got alcohol poisoning. And I had to be rushed to the hospital. This was during a weekday. It wasn't like on the weekend or anything. Like I was really drinking, right? And the thing that kind of woke me up was I was admitted in the same hospital that I was working at. And like I mentioned, it's a weekday. It's a weekday. So my boss is emailing me. I'm getting the emails on my phone. He's like, Darrius, like, where are you? You missed the 9 a.m. meeting. You missed the 1 o'clock meeting. I'm like, dude, I'm in the hospital.
Yeah.
And he's like, yo, what hospital are you in? And I'm like, the one we work at. And we broke down the scenario, what happened, what I was dealing with, and how he could best support me at that time in my life. And honestly, that changed everything for me because I was like, look, man, if I'm able to focus, if I'm able to put all my focus and energy and attention into something that's detrimental for my health, for my life, then I can damn sure put like my energy into something that's beneficial, you know? So I honestly, people think this is like kind of crazy, but I honestly just started running. Running changed everything for me. I just went out one morning, early in the morning, and I started running blindly. I didn't care about how far I was going, how fast I was going, but that's how I like set my day. I ran this morning, man, and this was like 3-4 years ago. But I had to find an anchor, something to anchor me down, and like running helped me, any type of physical activity, hiking, whatever it is. And then I had to like stimulate my mind and see what else is out there. You know, there's other people who are dealing with the same thing you're dealing with, who are dealing with something that's worse than what you're going through. And the more you're able to learn about those stories of those people who are willing to share their story, like you're able to break life down, right? That's why I always like the phrase, you know, you're a student of life, because we're here to learn from each other. We're not here to be better than this person, be better than that person. We are literally here to learn from each other. And yeah, that truly changed everything in my life. You know, and I actually think that's why I have such a different perspective on failure, because I've shared this story with, you know, people who are close to me. But they're like, Darrius, you know, that you don't mind sharing that story. I'm like, because my story's not over yet. That was just, you know, that's a bump in the road. That's just an obstacle. That's supposed to happen. Sometimes, you know, lessons have to be, you know, you have to learn the lesson yourself. You have to go through it yourself.
Yeah.
You know, so I had to go through that. I had to handle that, take that on the chin. And, you know, we've learned from it, definitely. We definitely learned from that. So that's a blessing in and of itself.
I hear you. It's that misfortune kind of put you in a position that, by that I mean the alcohol poisoning put you in a position to then do better in life. You know, right after that, not to speak too much on that, I also went through a similar situation, same year, just about 2 months right after, which also put me in a position where I had to rethink life and make some changes. You know, your approach was exercising more, stimulating the mind. My approach was reading a bit more, which is also stimulating the mind. So it's like you find new outlets to elevate yourself. I have one question, but I'm gonna let Ron talk about this for a bit.
Because Darrius is saying, and I'm assuming that happened in 2019, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah.
Francis, you went through something in 2019.
Yep.
And then I went through something in 2020. And this crazy part about it, all, we all viewed the situation and embraced it and still kept it pushing as literally a bump in the road. I mean, I don't know if you remember 2020, I was in your house screaming, hey, God, life is good. Nah, I mean, those exact words.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And mind you, the entire world was going upside down.
Yeah.
So I just kind of want to share that, because it's not just, you know, we're talking out of, you know, just out of context or anything in that. It's just real life examples and it's real life experiences that we're all sharing and that we consistently share on a daily basis, whether it be on the podcast or not. But I think just shedding a light on that, and just 3 individuals talking about, hey, how do we navigate through this life that tomorrow we're still going to have to figure out? You know, the next hour it still has to be figured out. Of maybe go through a situation that you're still going to have to navigate something. But I will say, having people around you could definitely help. And this is for everybody that's really listening. Having people around you could really help, especially if you could just have a person to just say a few words to. That can maybe take some of that load, take some of that tension that's off of whatever the case may be going through. But I just really want to share that light, kind of put some emphasis on that real quick, Francis. But go ahead, I know you were going to say something.
No, I'm actually going to tie down with what you just said about having people around. You know, this is kind of an announcement to everyone. We started a meetup group that's going to be meeting bi-weekly starting April 10th. Downtown Raleigh. My expectation is we can also set up something in Durham. I know it's kind of out of your way, Darrius, but it goes along with that. The purpose of it is to be able to bring people together and share these experiences and you know, and kind of and grow together. You said we are all students of life, and we all here to learn and complement each other on our journey. We all have different gifts. There's a lot of things that you know that I don't know. Your experiences, I probably will never go through similar experiences that you've been through, but there are bits and pieces there that will help me on my walk in life. And the being together in the room, especially after spending 2 years where we didn't have that really, we're all enclosed in our corner. It's important to bring people together. So we're starting it. It's bi-weekly. Darrius, you're more than welcome to join whenever you can. It'll be on Monday at 6 p.m. And there's a flyer out there. I'll send you that. But this is also a call to anybody who's listening to feel free to stop by, come in. There's no judgment. It's an environment where everybody is welcome, and invite others if you can. But my question to you, Darrius, is as a student of life, like everyone else, what is your primary advice to another student of life listening to this call right now?
Yeah, great question. And Francis, yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I think that's very helpful, especially for Black men. I don't want to speak for all Black men, but like for us, it's kind of challenging for us to find, you know, safe spaces to express ourselves and express to other people what is really going on, you know, in our lives. So, you know, thank you for sharing that for sure. And I'm definitely going to make some time. You said it's 6 p.m. when?
6 p.m. to 7 on Mondays. And the first Monday will be April 10th, and it's bi-weekly. So it's not every Monday. Yeah. So even if you miss one, you don't have to be there at every single event, but we'll love to see you there and just come in and talk. It's not like a networking event style where you have to, you know, business card and all that stuff. No. This is a place for us to grow together.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's incredibly helpful. I'm definitely gonna, you know, stop in, you know, sometime for sure. And to answer your question, what advice would I give someone who identifies as being a student of life? Honestly, I would tell anybody, I don't care who you are, where you're from, who you love, what your religion is, I don't care. But leave your scent, you know, leave your scent wherever you go.
Yeah.
And that's kind of something I try to do. I know my dad did it. And it's obvious to like how his life is now, but the constant moving, and changing, transitioning, it can be overwhelming at times. But when I mean like leave your scent, be your authentic self all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to, you know, hide your light because of what people may think, what they may say, what they may feel. Be your authentic self. And this is something I had to learn. Like I didn't have this as a kid. I was the kid, you know, you go into an environment, I'm gonna act like they act because I'm trying to fit in. I'm trying to, you know, I was trying to follow. Leaders don't follow. And even if, you know, you're in a room of 30 people, 28 of them don't like you, one person gravitates to anything you say. That's leaving your scent. Sometimes, you know, we live in a social media generation where we want to have a following, right? We want to have influence. Everybody wants to be an influencer. Sometimes you can influence 2 people, 3 people. That's all you need to do. And those 3 people can influence 4 or 5 others, 10 others. Who knows?
Right.
That's leaving your scent. So that's what I would tell anybody, man. You know, just be your true self. And yeah, man, leave your scent for real. Because that's what I kind of pride myself on. And another quick piece of advice, I would say don't get distracted. And I know that like that sounds very simple, but you know, I get distracted every day. You know, I got distracted this morning. I didn't want to get up and run. I'm like, man, I'm tired. This bed is distracting. You know, but I think when we have a goal or an objective as you know, individuals that we feel like we want to attain or we need to attain, sometimes we feel like we need, oh, well, I'm not going to do this because I don't have enough money right now, or nobody's going to support me, or nobody's going to do this. Excuses. No, like my idea of just how to overcome that is instead of being out here. Here's an analogy. When we're outside and we're chasing butterflies, they're beautiful. We want to chase them and catch them and look at them. We're wasting energy, right? We're wasting energy. We're wasting resources. We're wasting time. And the butterflies might just fly away, go somewhere else. So instead of being out here chasing butterflies, we should probably just, tend to our own garden. So then the butterflies come to us. So, just keep doing what you're doing. Be yourself. Leave your scent. And, don't give up. Stay strong. Stay hard.
When you say butterflies, I don't know if you actually mean butterflies or if you mean what most men chase.
It could mean a lot of things. It could mean a lot of things.
Yeah. We won't go into that. We won't go into that. But yeah, butterflies just meaning, like anything that's aesthetically pleasing in society, my friends got a nice car, so just because he's got a nice car, I need a nice car. It's not realistic, brother. So, niceness is, does the car have doors that open? Does the engine work? Does it have heat, AC? It's a nice car to me, baby.
Yeah.
So it's all about perspective.
That's facts. Well said.
Okay,
Appreciate the input.
I like every time we speak, somehow, some way, your father comes up into the conversation. And so I have to ask this one question. What's the greatest lesson that you've learned from him?
It's a good one.
Wow, I don't think I've ever been asked that before.
That's a good one.
The greatest lesson that I've learned from my dad, I would say humility. Humility is probably one of the greatest, because I didn't understand it at the time, but I truly do understand like humility and sacrifice. My dad drove the same car for 23 years. He would have drove it for longer if the engine didn't blow up on him. It was a 91 Honda Accord. My dad was actually a high-ranking officer in the United States Air Force. He was in charge of 33,000 people at one point in his career. And he was working at the Pentagon at the time. And he was driving this old 91 Honda Accord with no AC in the summer in D.C. with the windows down. He had his military. And I'm like, yo, Dad, like, what are you doing? He's like, well, we're waiting on the parts to come in. I'm like, yo, just get a new car. Get a different car. And he was like, yeah, if I get a different car today, he said, then that takes money out of your college fund. Eventually, you're going to need a car. It's going to take money out of that. It's going to take money out of this. Like, he just broke everything down. And my dad also asked me, he's like, we had this conversation a couple of days ago. And I talk to my parents every day, so that's probably why I bring them up so much. But he called me, he's like, Darrius, I dreamt about some lottery tickets, some lottery numbers. He's like, I'm going to play these numbers, see what happens. And I'm like, Dad, if you win $10 million, what would you do? And he said, I would make sure, you and your mom good, house paid off, probably get your mom a new car, a better car, one that she doesn't, her car's not bad now, but you want your family to be safe, of course. He was like, yeah, I'd make sure, these people in my family are set up. Not one time, and I actually asked him this, I was like, Dad, you do notice you didn't even mention anything about a vacation. And he was like, every day is a vacation for me. He's like, I wake up. My dad almost died last summer. He had to go through this like emergency surgery. And he was calm. He was humble. He was like, man, there's nothing I can control. He's always been like that. So I think like the older I get, I'm more appreciative of how humble and how unimpressed he is with, things, material things.
Yeah.
Material things don't impress. My dad brags about how old his clothes are. He's like, I got this in 1980. stop. Man, nobody cares, but that's who he is. But I truly do appreciate his humility, and I'd like to say he's blessed me with some of that, or I've taken some of that from him. But definitely his humility and his humility, man, in his heart for sure.
I'm sure he's gonna be listening to this now. So if you didn't say anything else and you get a butt whooping, bro, don't blame it on me.
And I know, brother. He's just. Why didn't you say this? Why didn't? Oh my God.
But I appreciate that. To wrap things up, we definitely like to end things out on a good note. And this is a question we ask all of our guests. It may stump you up, but it's meant to really get you to think a little bit more. And so the question is ultimately, what do you think is the number one thing holding people back from reaching their full potential?
That won't really stump me up because I'm telling you what held me back. And it's other people's perspective or perception of who you are. That's just my experience. I was oftentimes in my past, I cared about what people thought. Like I held that emotionally close to my heart. And it was people who had no impact in my life whatsoever. So now I have a completely different perspective.
Gotcha.
When people tell me, they come to me sometimes for stories and they want my advice. They're like, Darrius, what should I do about this? Even like intimate relationships. Does this person pay any of your bills? If not, why are you so stressed about this? Why are you spending so much energy on this? That's why I talk to my parents every day. My parents have literally supported me since before I knew I was being supported, and they always have my back. So yeah, just letting go of outside perceptions, man. That's
Darrius, what helped
nobody
you?
is you.
Just a quick follow up there. What helped you break out of that? Like letting go.
Life.
Gotcha. Experiences.
Life. Because, like I mentioned that alcohol poisoning stuff, I had people actually, like, I was telling people I thought I was close to, and they were like, I'm sorry that happened to you. Okay, well, I'm sorry this happened with us, so see ya. You're not here to support me, you're just sorry. So I don't need your sympathy, I need your support.
Yeah, they'll clap when you're at the top, and when you're at the bottom, just look at you from afar, basically.
Amen.
Yeah.
Like I say, sometimes you just have to go through it, and I feel like you guys are y'all are insightful individuals, man. Y'all, and honestly, I just want to say this before we end, Francis, you really did, man. I have never told you this, man. You actually changed my life in terms of waking up early. Yo, I would see this dude's Instagram story, and he's up at like 5:30 making coffee. I'm like, yo, what in the world? Like, who's up doing? And it's on a weekend. I'm like, bro. So that really did change. I'm like, yo, there's people up earlier than you, and whether they're doing anything or not, they're being productive. Like, he's up with a book, making coffee at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah,
I got to do better. That's just what I said to myself. I have to do better. So, thank you for that. For real.
Appreciate you, man. That's how we push each other, man. It's simple things, little things like that, and it goes a long way. Yes, sir.
So with that being said, thank you for tuning in, everyone, and staying to the end. And wherever you're listening, don't forget to show love, especially if you're on the YouTube. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're listening to our voices here on the podcast version, the audio only, don't forget to leave us a review and connect with us, because everything we preach over here is all about growing with us, unleashing your power to go ahead and transform your mind and your reality. So until next time, keep on applying those perspectives, education, growth, and collaboration.